Before we continue, understand this podcast is for adults only and refers to relationships and activities between adults which are voluntary and consensual. If you or anyone you know is being abused, coerced, or violently aggressed against, please reach out for help to the appropriate authorities. Hello, and welcome. Gorean Voice, Episode 11, Gore as a Relational Enterprise. Thanks for tuning in again. On this happy Sunday morning, I'd like to talk about the Gorean lifestyle as a relational enterprise. By relational, I mean that any attempt at living in a Gorean manner without at least a goal towards establishing some kind of relationship is going to veer away from a genuine, healthy lifestyle practice into a decaying orbit of fantastic indulgence and self-delusion, which becomes more and more dissociated from reality with each iteration. This is where I'll again break with some percentage of Goreans who engage in a Gorean roleplay practice in some virtual world or chat room. I am of the opinion that such roleplay is of a kind apart from other roleplay practices such as tabletop RPGs or video games. It certainly is the case that video games and virtual worlds are becoming more immersive as technology marches on. One can argue that there are commensurate increases in the utility of gaming and interaction as such. In the fictional world of Star Trek, such technology has been taken to its theoretical limit. Without a direct connection to the human mind, people can walk about and physically interact with a holographic world indistinguishable from reality. Indeed, with such technology, there is much to be gained, as people may train certain skills in such an environment or experience exotic locations and time periods. However, even in the speculative fiction of Star Trek, there is a pathological side to this, and on more than one occasion, a character develops an unhealthy connection to this holodeck, and his hollow pursuits have negative impacts on his life in the real world. I'm not the only person to have opined on the risks of spending too much time in the virtual world, but I believe Gorean roleplay, or any other roleplay that invokes an emotional connection between two individuals, presents unique risks if a real-life engagement is not the goal. Gorean roleplay has an explicit romantic component. You need not call it romantic, but it certainly rides on sexual tension that exists between complementary opposites, such as male and female or master and slave. Now, I always like to play devil's advocate, so let me defend the online role players for just a moment. Firstly, it makes sense to me that an introduction into a Gorean type lifestyle or value system could certainly come into someone's life by way of an intermediated virtual environment. In some cases, this is even advantageous as it offers physical safety. On the downside, the emotional connection may run just as deep as with a physical relationship, and it's not exactly easy to tell if one's feelings are being reciprocated or manipulated. In the meantime, time goes by just as fast in the real world, whether one is catfishing or being catfished. Secondly, people who have endured traumatic relationships, romantic or otherwise, may find it helpful to interact virtually. Helpful, though, isn't precisely the right word. It's more like easier. They may find it easier. Of course, it's for the individual in question, and not me, to figure out the best way to overcome such trauma. But I suspect that virtual interaction beyond a certain point could make it easy to neglect to build those actual social muscles, letting the trauma win and atrophy one's social capacity right down to an agoraphobic stump. Social painkillers, like Second Life, may be more addictive than physical painkillers. Last but not least, in many cases, people indulge in a role play when their life circumstances are completely incompatible with such a romantic pursuit, or any pursuit in that direction can only distract and subtract from their real life relationships or goals. Consider a married man who indulges in some Gorean roleplay with a woman online. Unless he is some sort of polygynous patriarch, in order to bring that relationship to something like fruition, or even consummation, he essentially needs to grenade his own family. If there are children involved, his offense is multiplied. Every moment he put into chatting and virtual play with busty blonde Kajira 69 is a moment he could have put into improving his relationship with his flesh and blood family. Even if the chatting and play is replete with an emotional salience that is absent in one's flesh and blood relationships, it's one's own responsibility to cultivate the more important relationships. I've also read and listened to some people's take on such role play that it is explicitly separate from their real lives, and by their lights, any attempt to integrate the two is completely inappropriate. At first glance, such an approach may seem like the most sensible one, but the entire Gorean roleplay endeavor is charged with explicitly sexual imagery and energy. Can someone really keep that separate from their flesh and blood romantic life without disjointing oneself? Unlike porn, which I have a very low opinion of, the first-person interactive aspect of roleplay seems tailor-made to bleed into one's real life. So there are reasons to play online, but I think the cons outweigh the pros by several times. People are going to do what they're going to do. Normal video games, role-playing or not, such as puzzle games, shooters, and flight sims, they don't occlude into one's real life and overwrite priorities in the same way that a virtual romantic pursuit may. Someone who plays Call of Duty or Halo is wasting a bit of time, sure, and hopefully with his friends, so they can throw apple cores and pizza crusts at each other's heads on the other side of the physical room. But nobody doing so is interfering with their actual career as an infantryman or a space marine. The line between the actual and the virtual is crystal clear. There's a minor plus, though. People can certainly meet in an online space and find a genuine life partner. At some point in the future, I may log in to some online Second Life type space as a means of promoting my Treven Forge collars, but I can't really see myself making use of it for personal reasons. I'm happy to make contact with new friends online, but I prefer to meet people in the big blue room with the people in it. Online indulgences aside, I think it's important to keep relationships as a central theme in any Gorean pursuit. Relationships are really the most important things in the arcs of most people's lives. Statistically, there are a few geniuses, captains of industry, or high-performance career-type people in any group, but most people don't have a career. They have a job. Most people won't make history. They won't leave a dent in the universe except for the relationships they build with other people, especially family relationships. I think that this idea is almost countercultural at this point. Most young people are taught from an early age that the most important and meaningful part of their lives will be their careers. Even among the jet set, though, if you can ask them in a quiet room, away from the cameras, what's most important to them in their own lives, they'll frequently cite their relationships with their wives or husbands, and especially with their children. So what does keeping relationships front and center mean? I think that depends. To someone in a relationship, it means prioritizing the cultivation of connection, both erotic and practical, with one's spouse. This relationship should be in pretty darn good shape before any online indulgences are partaken. It also means cultivating friendships with other like-minded individuals or couples. A Gorean lifestyle, or any other MS-type lifestyle, is a subculture. I think it's the prerogative of people engaged in such a lifestyle to grow the culture, or at least one's local connections within it. It may be the case that one's elective subculture is very niche. In this case, I would say it's better to cultivate local relationships with members of other subcultures that are somewhat overlapping with one's own, rather than spend too much time communicating with faraway people who share precisely the same subculture. That big blue room with the people in it really does win out over pixels 99 times out of 100. For people who are currently without a partner in their life, I think it's crucial to both be realistic in one's expectations and sensible in one's preparations. Increasingly deep dives into esoteric interests will certainly stack the odds in the wrong direction. Consider a young man who wants to have a woman in his life. Perhaps he'd also like to have her in his steel. Memorizing the Gore books chapter and verse, going deep into the Pathfinder tabletop RPG lore, and building out a complete set of Pokemon stuffies may be very attractive to exactly 100 women on this planet. So as not to spend all of his life seeking them out, it might be best to concentrate on aspects of his personhood that have a little more general appeal to the ladies walking around his city. Some sort of career ambition, some decent clothes, a recent coif, six-pack abs, a motorcycle, and a little strumming at the beach or park will put quite a few more women in front of him than the narrow approach. Lads, if her eye likes your shape, and her ear your note, she'll be pretty happy to try on some handcuffs and a stainless steel necklace for you. Side note, please don't ever make the rookie mistake of asking women what they find attractive. This includes your mom. Don't ask a deer, ask a hunter. Ladies, I'm not in the habit of giving your sex romantic advice, but with respect to keeping the idea of a relationship realistically prioritized as a facet of a Gorean lifestyle, cultivating grace and beauty in the physical world is best. This can happen during all phases of life. It just doesn't always look the same. In the wider sense of relational, I think it's worth one's time to cultivate relationships that are at least Gore adjacent or Gore compatible in one's peer group. Again, at different phases of one's life, this can have a very different look. Young adults living an exciting life in the city center have different possibilities for fellowship than the parents of young children who have moved to the burbs. In my life, I still make an effort to crack the code a little. I chat a bit with the other dads at school and sports functions, see where they're at, and I pursue friendships on the basis of common philosophies, etc. I've never met another Gorean couple in this way, but I've met a few people who practice taken-in-hand type relationships. Gore isn't my only avocation, and the fellows I meet in the practice of my other hobbies, among them marksmanship, jiu-jitsu, and motorcycling, seem to have the right combination of an orientation towards personal sovereignty and philosophical depth, and more than a touch of eclecticism, that will find common ground. Like I keep hammering on, the Gore books express a normative view of the relationship between the sexes. How far one wants to take it certainly varies, but if one wants to get it off the page and into one's life, there's some real work, legwork to be done. Thanks for listening. In a future episode, I'm going to look at Gore and BDSM. We'll go through various opinions on the matter and look at colloquial definitions and more technical, almost rabbinical definitions of each letter and pair of letters in that acronym. But please tune in again next week, where I'll be going deep on the concept of service. It's something that goes both ways, but is not a mirror image. I look forward to sharing what is to me the most beautiful sight in the world. Lads, stay upright. Respect the respectable and don't give in. Ladies, continue to cultivate grace and beauty. You were born to shine. Both, no excuses. Talk to you in a week. Be well.